Karuna with SSR Production. He is a tabla virtuoso, now a Recording Academy voting member, helping to shape the future of the Grammy Awards. I'm Karuna with SSR Productions, and today's conversation is a particularly special one. It's not just about music, it's also about identity and global cultural presence. Today, I'm joined by an artist whose journey stretches from the Caribbean to India to some of the most prestigious stages around the world. He is a tabla virtuoso, a composer, a collaborator in jazz and the theater scene as well, and now a Recording Academy voting member, helping to shape the future of the Grammy Awards. I'm joined by Avirodh Sharma. Welcome, Avi. It is such a privilege to have you.
Such a pleasure to meet you, Karuna. Keep up the amazing work you're doing here in Trinidad.
Of course, and I could say the same for you. I'm thoroughly impressed with the work that you've accomplished so far.
Thank you.
And, I want to start just right where you are because I'm so excited just thinking that there is some representation for us in the Caribbean
Yes.
and particularly for the Indo-Caribbean identity
Yes.
in the Recording Academy.
Sure.
So what does that mean, really?
It means I have a big responsibility. The Grammy Committee has been watching me for the last 20 years, and they saw that there needed to be more representation from the Caribbean Indian community, and they've been following my career, and they felt that I can help represent that in the Grammy circle.
And now having joined as a voting member,
Yes.
what do you carry with you?
Yeah, I carry our identity, I carry our people, I carry the ancestors that got on the boat over the Kalapani to get to Trinidad and Guyana. So I'm very passionate about that because I think about the sacrifices they made, and we are just enjoying their hard work, but we should never forget them. So anywhere I'm playing tabla in the world, I'm representing them. And so I use the Grammy platform as a way of telling our story.
Right. You've been trained in Indian classical music, right? In India, of all places. But before I get to that, you mentioned our history as Indo-Caribbean people,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that I would like to hear from you about in terms of, all the layers that it represents.
Yeah.
Because Indo-Caribbean music and artists and artistry is not something that is typically represented on a global stage.
Agreed, agreed. So for the last 25 years, almost 30 years, growing up in New York City as well, you'd be surprised that when you hear the word Caribbean or West Indian, I think the American folks, they just think of Bob Marley or reggae and dancehall, not realizing that there's this whole other Indian component. And so you have in the Indo-Caribbean folk music, you have the local classical here in Trinidad, the tan singing in Guyana, the Beta Ghana in Suriname. This is still, I think, an untapped subculture that they're yet to discover. So when I'm doing shows in the West Coast, whether it's at the Global Theater in San Diego, and you have all these Anglo-American folks, it's like, yeah, we know Caribbean people. I mean, reggae. I'm like, no, we have Indians in the Caribbean. Like, Indians in the Caribbean, they're shocked. So there's still, I think, there's a big part of the world that's still discovering, or rather uncovering our identity as Caribbeans. So I feel like I have a responsibility now to kind of educate people in the process while I'm on tour and sharing that story with them.
That's a huge responsibility because even in 2026, with all the information available at our fingertips, we still have to break it down this way, right?
Agreed. I mean, you have Gemini or ChatGPT at our disposal, but there's nothing like a human being when you're sitting next to each other.
Yes.
Human being.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but there's nothing like a real conversation.
Yeah.
So yes, unless you're inquisitive and you're curious, then you'll use these platforms to search the answers. But we still need to have this conversation person to person.
And then there's the language of music, right?
Absolutely.
Where you connect on a soul level and then you are able to convey everything that your words feel to do. So this is where I want to take us back to your Indian classical training.
Sure.
So you spent your early childhood years in India,
Yeah,
right?
so I mean, I'm Trinity born. My hometown is here in Cuba. My family they did a lot of work in the cultural sector in the last 40 years here in Trinidad and so forth. And so in the early 80s, there was a scholarship program between the Trinidadian government and the Indian government where artists, or at least potential musicians and scholars, would go to India and study. So my parents were one of the first to have migrated there under a scholarship to study Indian classical music. And it happens where we were staying at the time, our home ended up being like a West Indian embassy. When artists are coming to India, like people like Mangal Patesar and many scholars from Guyana would come situate themselves at our home, and I would constantly see people coming in and out of our house. I'm just like, who are these strangers? Who are these people? And in the midst of that, you don't realize the significance of it only when you fast forward, right? 30 years later. But growing up as an Indian, well, as a West Indian in India, learning Hindi being my first language, adapting to that culture, and then when my parents finished that 5 years, I came back here to Trinidad. I went to Montrose Vedic in Chaguanas for about 9 months, and then we migrated to the United States. That part of my identity has shaped, I would say, probably more than 90% of what I do today.
Wow.
Moving from India back to Trinidad here, then to New York, and then I went to two, three other schools. So you're constantly on the move.
Yeah,
And in the midst of that, you're kind of finding your identity. Where do I fit in all of this?
yeah,
And luckily, music was that unifying factor, that kind of saved me.
yeah. Indian classical music.
Yeah, yeah.
And how do you reconcile you also have Guyanese roots,
Yes, my mom
right?
was considered a Nightingale of Demerara in the
Wow.
70s. She used to sing on the radio, and she was very active in the Indian culture scene in Guyana, and still is, by the way.
So you come from a legacy
Yes,
of musicians being
yes,
taught by both parents,
yes.
but still your Trinidadian, your Guyanese roots similar.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
How do you reconcile that
Yeah,
identity, your Caribbean identity, with what you were being taught in
yeah,
India and your
yeah.
experience there?
So let me talk from the West Indian angle. So it's interesting. I was raised to be neutral.
Okay.
Like my mom was like, you have to respect your father's side of the family and your mother's side of the family. Every time as a teenager I would come and visit, I would have to come to Trinidad first and then hop to Guyana after, see that side of the family, and I always had to like see the similarities and the differences and respect both spaces and don't judge. Just be objective,
Yeah.
experience the culture for what it is, and just absorb. So that's one aspect of it. And then, of course, going back to India, I'll give you an example. I performed at the Taj Mahotsav festival where the late Dexter Raghunandan had performed. He's one of our great icons here in Trinidad.
Yes.
And after that performance, this gentleman came up to me. He says, I always wanted to know what happened to the people that left India 180 years ago.
Hmm.
And it hit me. It was a 360 moment. It was where, basically our ancestors left Trinidad and Guyana, India 180 years ago, migrated to the Caribbean, and here I am representing the arts, tabla playing, which I learned in the Western world, back into India, and they looked at me and say, hey, you're Indian at heart, your values are Indian, just like we are, and we're
Right.
not that different. So knowing that we've been displaced 180 years ago, we were still able to retain our identity, one, and I feel we're at a threshold now, since Modi has come to visit Trinidad and all these other places, that the Indians are looking at the Caribbeans more with respect, and also with a sense of, like, hey,
Brotherhood.
we are
Yeah.
brothers and we
Yeah.
are family. It's not that, okay, you're this diaspora
Right.
country. No, we are the same people,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, listening to your music,
yes,
you do hear those layers, I find.
okay.
But do you personally recognize that?
Yes,
You know?
well, in the creation process, that was intentional.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, because of my unique experience and exposure, I wanted to make sure the music I create represents all these layers. And hopefully a Trinidadian can resonate with it, a Guyanese can resonate with it, or someone from India can resonate with it. Even someone from the streets of Brooklyn in New York should be able to resonate with it.
Right.
So yeah, that is by
So
design.
you feel that the Indo-Caribbean musical identity
Sure.
is vastly different or similar to the Indian sound?
Um, So of course, as you know, we have soka chutney, all of that. I mean, we have our own kind of masala here.
Yeah.
The Indian masala is very different from from Chief's masala, here
Yeah.
in Trinidad. So yeah, I think when you talk about doubles and you talk about chole bhature, when I go to India, I try to kind of give them the similarities.
Yeah.
Of course, our spices are different. So we have, in terms of our version of food, yes, it is very different. But in terms of the culture, how we do puja, how you do hawan,
Hmm.
I think Indians look at us and they say, wow, you guys are more Indian than we are.
Right.
I get that all the time when I'm on tour.
That is
Yeah.
a really different kind of unique perspective. I've never heard that
Yeah,
before, but
I swear to God, every
wow.
concert, people will come whisper in my ear. They'll say, Avi, you're more Indian than we are. I don't know how you people do it. You get them to go to temples.
Yeah.
You have all these parades. You have these big motorcades, big, like Diwali Nagar here in
Yeah.
Trinidad.
I
They're
guess
very
I
intrigued
can
by it.
probably see the side of it where, when we came here and we were isolated,
So we had to hold on to
we
the
had to hold
identity.
on to it. So we've created a
Absolutely.
little bubble
Bubble.
here, and
Correct.
we've been living in that bubble. So
Correct.
while it sounds strange, coming from,
Yeah.
someone who was born and raised in India,
Yeah.
because again, we've been Bollywoodized, we think
Correct.
that that is the only way.
Yeah. No, it's not.
It's not,
Yeah.
right?
No, absolutely.
But just mirroring that, you talked about the food and
Sure.
the language
Yeah.
and, even just the way that you learned your craft,
Yeah.
right? You learned this tabla in the classical space.
Yeah.
That's one
So
thing.
so I was a kid. Imagine while my dad was studying, he was doing his master's in Hindustani music in India. I would wake up to him practicing 4 or 5 hours a day
Yeah.
because he would have exams, he would have all these things. So we were raised in a way that we weren't forced to do any of this.
Okay.
The environment was there, the instruments were there, the influence of people were there,
Yeah.
but it's like you experiment. Okay, try this out, see if it works. Try this out. But I was very fortunate in a lot of, traditional classical homes in India. There is like this rigid system. I never felt that rigidity. Well, sorry, but yeah, I never felt that the kind of pressure
Yeah.
to have to say, oh, I have to learn it this way and I have to do that way.
Okay.
It was a natural progression.
Okay.
And since it was in New York City, I felt that we had room to experiment, try different things. And it's funny, as a teenager, in order to connect more with the classical music, I would, in those days, it was Napster and LimeWire. That gives me my age. And we would find music from Europe that had Indian classical music elements. And I was like, wow, this is hip. You have guys like Talvin Singh and Karsh Kali that I grew up listening
Yes.
to.
Kashkari.
And I was fortunate to work with Karsh many times as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And he, when we talk about these things, he's like, it wasn't intentional at the time, but to be able to hear an element of, let's say, bansuri in an electronic piece of work, it piques your curiosity to know more about the classical roots,
Yeah.
but from a mainstream perspective. And so that's how I got more into it. It pulled me in through that
Right.
lens.
Yes.
And I talk to my students about that, like, hey, you don't have to just experience classical music from this authentic orthodox way.
Yeah.
You can experience it from these other spaces,
Right.
and it's a very different experience.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. That's I think inspiring to hear for anyone who wants to explore the classical space but might be intimidated by all the rules and the framework. We were talking off camera
Sure.
about how classical music has this rigid framework.
Of course.
You have to learn these tals, these rags. If music doesn't exist within these structures, then is it real music? Some audiences would be critical about it.
Of course.
And while you may have come from a more liberal kind of background where you had the freedom to,
Yeah.
and then your influences would have been like Karsh Kali,
Sure. Sure.
you still must get some scrutiny from the
Yeah, from the
purists,
purists. Sure. So I'll share this with you. I was fortunate to have to do some workshops with the late Zakir Hussain.
Mhm.
And one of the elements, I think, at least one of the qualities that kept him grounded as an artist, is that the classical was like the center,
Okay.
and the limbs and the branches were like all the other fusion and the explorations.
Yeah.
But he always came back to the roots.
Right.
He never neglected them.
Okay.
And I felt like, that's a great way to stay grounded.
Yes.
And I feel the classical roots are the foundation.
Yeah.
Know it well, and the ability to explore and to be more creative just opens up, it magnifies in
Yeah.
all the different genres when you go in. But don't get lost
Right.
in the process. Come back home
Right.
at some point. So I always, this is what keeps me grounded. Like, okay,
Yeah.
Like I will work with an electronic artist one day, another day with someone in jazz, someone in the theater space,
Yeah.
and then I come back to the classical space. Believe it or not, I'm actually mentally refreshed.
Right.
When I'm doing a concert, I don't have to overthink.
Right.
Just be in the moment, be present,
Yes.
and trust your training.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, you've been name dropping since the start of this conversation. Karsh Kale,
Sure.
Zakir Hussain.
Yeah.
I know you also toured with Kailash Kher.
Absolutely.
So,
We still,
so in
work
terms of
together.
philosophy, what would a core difference be between working with someone who maintains that classical kind of I mean, to me, to an audience member, that's how I feel anyway.
Yeah.
For someone who's in the circle, you might say differently, but to
Yeah.
me, the sound is still very traditional when you're
Sure.
listening to Ustad Zakir Hussain's music
Sure.
versus Kailash Kher's music, which is more
Sure.
of Sufi soul
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
What is that like for you, someone who's been close to
Great
both?
question. Amazing. That's a really brilliant question. So I was about 14 and I turned on the radio, uh, 89.9 FM in New York, and I heard this resounding voice. I was like, who is this singer? And it just happened that it was Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan,
Um,
the great, Qawwali singer, and he had just passed away. And
can I ask what this song was?
it was an Allahu rendition. It was Qawwali, very famous. Allahu, 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 very famous song. And they were doing this tribute to him. And I was like, what is this? I never heard his work. And here's this singer. He emulated the Sufi tradition. Of course, he lived by it. And I heard the tabla player in the recordings. It's a simple kahwa, in 8 beats. And that vibe that he brought into this Qawwali style, I never heard anything like it. I was like, I need to bring that into my music. Okay, then I would listen to Kailash Kher or a pop singer. There are unique signature elements that I would say the great artists have in their work.
Okay.
And I studied those elements and I've kind of brought those influence into my package, including Zakir Hussain, including the Karshkalis and so forth, and try to create my own, music, from that. So the thing is, I'll share this one thing, is that it's important to know the human being behind the artists before you go on stage with them.
Right.
Get to know their likes and dislikes. A lot of times artists fake the chemistry on stage, and it's not a difficult thing. All it is to know them off stage. The chemistry takes care of itself on stage, just like how we're having this conversation. Just be yourself, understand who you're working with, understand their personality. That tends to translate on stage when they have to play this raga or this bandish or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I take the effort to know the people that I work with,
Right.
every genre. Like with Kailash Kher, his band gave me all of his work. I had to study all of his Kailash Kher's music. So when I step on stage, I'm not there like, okay, what am I going to do here? No, I'm ready to play a full set as if I've been playing in their band for the last 20 years.
You're right.
And then the leader was like, he was shocked. He was like, here's this West Indian guy just coming in, and I fit right in as if I was one of them.
Yeah.
And the great John McLaughlin, who's part of the Shakti,
Mm-hmm.
I think I learned that quality from him. If you can learn the tradition that you want to work in from the outside and you plug yourself in, you should be able to assimilate and be part of that culture as if you've been with them for 20, 30 years. You shouldn't just be like a tabla player playing beats, trying to create, you want to be able to plug in, don't create, something that's not organic.
Yes.
You want to be organic.
Yeah. Now that could not have been easy. You're saying it's
Yeah.
organic
It's a
and there's
process.
a
Yeah.
flow to it, but
You have to study the traditions.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's where you grow.
I guess that's where as well, I guess your background
Yeah.
plays a role. The liberal background that you would have been raised in, where you were able to explore and,
And be
open-minded.
objective. Be
Be
objective. That's
yes.
the key.
So you go into a space or work with a new artist,
Sure.
a new group, a new band with that open-mindedness, and say, okay, what can I learn? You enter first as a student,
That's right.
and
That's
you're
right.
like, oh, I know everything.
Correct.
This is not how it's supposed to sound. Let me
Right.
teach you,
Right. No.
Um,
You hit it on the nail. You hit it on it because Zakir Hussain used to preach that all the time. Just be a good student,
mm,
and everything else will take care of itself. So
Right.
I live with that same sentiment.
yeah. I mean, but you hear it in your music, all the different influences. Now that you're saying it, and I think back to what I've been listening to over the last couple of days,
Sure.
you do hear it. You do
Thank you.
hear
Thank you.
The layers, like I said before. Um, and now it's added so much nuance, to what when I listen back after this.
Sure.
Um, so this brings me now to Global Stand Records,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Now you've created this record label.
Yeah.
How long ago?
It's about 2014, 13,
2014,
around that
right?
time. Yeah.
So what space was there, like a gap that you were trying to fill?
Exactly. I felt like in our in our Indo-Caribbean community,
Hmm.
there wasn't a space to to give our community uh, that exposure of fusion of classical, because one of the visions my dad had and has is to allow people to appreciate the art. So we were fortunate that we have a stage here there in New York City in our school, and throughout the year we plan events to expose new sounds for our community so they have a better understanding.
Hmm.
If we can bring Carnegie Hall to the East Indian Music Academy in Queens, why not? You don't
Right.
have to necessarily go all the way out there.
Yeah.
And so I felt that, by knowing that we have this space, how can we use it to educate the crowd, educate
Right.
the audience? It's not just entertainment.
Yes.
I feel one of the duties of an artist is to be able to spiritually and to morally uplift the listener.
Hmm.
Entertainment is only the byproduct. It's not the main goal. If you keep that in perspective, you'll never lose track with this whole image of fame and all of this stuff. You focus on the music with that intention in mind, and I think people will naturally resonate with it.
I think that's a fascinating philosophy. I think that's very important, actually, an important message for all musicians everywhere. Let the music do the talking, your intentions will
Correct.
show up, right?
Absolutely.
So Global Sound Records feels to me
Yeah.
not just like a musical creation, but
Yeah.
also
I invite
even,
many artists from all over the world
yeah, so
to
it's
play with
it's
me. Yeah.
become now
Sure.
a cultural, political statement as well. Like
Sure.
we're here and come get to know us. We have so much to offer.
Yeah.
So would you say in the last decade or so that you've accomplished that or you feel much closer to accomplishing that goal?
Yeah. I mean, look what the amazing work SSR Productions is doing here to kind of,
Spread the
literally,
message.
not just
Yeah.
spread the message, but you're creating a new platform
Mm.
to expose the Trinidadian community of what's out there. And we've been doing that in our little way in New York City. And I feel it's an uphill climb. It's not easy.
Hmm.
To be frank, it takes a lot of courage,
Yeah.
takes a lot of determination and perseverance to follow through on this goal and vision or mission,
Yes.
and to keep at it, whether it's one person that shows up at your show or 500,
Oh, yes.
And so that consistent drive, you have to really love what you're
Yes.
doing to deal with this, right?
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, but
I mean,
yeah,
like I said, I keep saying this to you. It can't have been easy. There's so much responsibility
it
that was
is.
placed on your shoulders from such an early age in terms of representation, in terms of the
You
way.
know what? Sorry to cut you off. I think I may have put that on myself.
Okay.
Um, when you grow up in front of great role models,
Yeah.
and in the studio we have someone visiting, my manager Kishore Sinoran. He was a mentor as well, and you grow up watching great personalities in your community. You naturally you become like a chip off the shoulder, right, or chip off the block when you have mentors that impact you, that you want to do something with your life, something significant and something meaningful, because there are those who've sacrificed for us so that we can be doing what we're doing. So there's that responsibility that comes with that. And you're right. It's like it wasn't placed though.
Hmm.
I saw that, okay, someone has to step up to the plate and make it happen.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so now you've accepted a new
Yeah.
responsibility, or you've
Yeah.
taken on a new
Tell me about
responsibility,
it. Yes. Yeah.
being part of the Recording Academy
Sure.
as a voting member.
I'm so honored. I'm so honored. So the Recording Academy governs the Grammy Awards,
Right.
and this year was my first, my duty, or at least as a voting member, to be very open and non-judgmental about the music I hear that are being considered for the Grammys. And basically, my vote, I had to vote during the first round of the Grammys, the second round, and then we'll know the winners coming up on February 1st.
So you've been, like you said, just for a short time, just about a
A year,
year,
a little less than a year.
and the first round only of your first.
Yeah,
And what was that like? Because
it
that
was
must have
overwhelming.
been, yeah.
It was overwhelming because you have to go into the special Grammy portal online where you have to, like, so my specialty are these three categories that the Grammy committee put me in. One was the world music, global performance, and what is it called? Chance, new age, yeah, chance and new age category.
Okay.
And of course, I get to vote on the mainstream acts like the Bad Bunnies and all this other stuff.
Right.
But I feel like my value is more in the space of, global music. So I had these three categories, and each one of these categories has about maybe 30 to 50 albums. So I have to sit there listening to every single one
Right.
and then see which one it's really subjective at that point, but all of them are great.
But
At that
listening as
level.
well, that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? But
Yeah.
then you're listening as an artist.
Yeah.
How does that change?
Yeah,
for you?
and
Do you
that's
listen
the
with
hard part.
innovation, cultural
Yeah.
significance,
Yeah.
all of it?
I have to create like a criteria and make sure
Okay.
it's a checklist, so I don't get carried away as an artist.
Right.
Because in my mind, everything sounds amazing.
Yes,
At least at this Grammy level,
Yes.
every single album that's submitted, it's brilliant work.
Right.
So I have to now, come up with my own criteria to say, okay, does it fill this? And if it meets this criteria, then I would put my vote for it. Yeah.
Okay. So you're enjoying the experience so far.
Amazing. I'm learning about new bands, new artists. I saw Marshall, he submitted an album this year. And yeah, I'm learning about new artists that I've never, knew that were out there doing great work. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
And
it.
I
Thank
know
you.
that it doesn't end here for you, someone with your ambition. I know that you're still a student, you're still using
Still a
it
student.
to
Still learning.
learn and to move up. But I want to thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you
the
so much
time.
for having me.
I do have a couple of just, I don't want to call them rapid fire
Sure.
questions, but
Sure.
just, little thinkers. So you've talked about all the collaborations that you've done. Huge collaboration. Like I said,
Sure.
the name dropping has been crazy, right? I mean, I'm very impressed with the level of work and also especially the way you've taken our sound because now we can claim, your work as well as ours. So I mean, that's so impressive by itself, but I mean, that must have a background of its own, right? So what collaboration in your formative years, let's say, that would have been the one that you heard that said, I want to make music like this?
Yeah. Um, it's a good question. So you have, one of Zakir Hussein's ensemble that he tours with. It's called Masters of Percussion,
Yeah.
and I've attended many of his of that concert series. And in my mind, I asked, why? How come Trinidad or Guyana or Suriname doesn't have representation of percussionists, where you bring the best, the cream of the crop together, and tour an ensemble like this?
Mm-hmm.
And right away I saw it. I was like, okay, you have all these great Indian musicians. How come we don't hear about our local people? Why are they not on a platform like this?
Right.
So I saw the need. I said, hey, we need to bring the local classical scene into spaces like this. The Beta Ganas need to be on this spaces. So this is one of my missions
Right.
that I'm driven to hopefully, get them to that stage.
And do you feel you're closer to helping us achieve that visibility?
Absolutely. I think the Grammys, being in the Grammy circle now, you have access to a lot of artists across the spectrum.
Are you the first Caribbean voting member?
So they say. You may have to fact check that, but I believe so.
Because that's
I believe so.
insane, right?
Yeah.
But you definitely would have been at least
Yeah.
the first Indo-Caribbean voting member,
Sure.
I'm sure, which
Yeah.
in itself is a huge achievement.
Thank you.
It's not just a personal milestone now.
Yeah.
You're carrying the weight of our culture.
Gee, thanks for reminding me how much
What
weight I gotta carry.
responsibility you didn't ask for.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
So you spoke about learning tabla in a very open space, a very liberal kind of
Yeah,
space,
yeah.
but still leaning within, the framework of Indian classical music.
Sure.
You know the tradition.
Sure.
So even though you're making this fusion music,
Sure.
jazz, theater,
Sure.
storytelling,
Sure.
what's one tradition you'll never compromise on?
What tradition that I wouldn't compromise on?
Yeah.
In what
Is
way?
there
Like compromising
something
in what
that
way?
you will maintain in
Yeah.
terms of Indian classical
Yeah.
music?
So yeah, I think it's important. So classical music, like the Hari Harans, the Colonial Cousins, these great albums that came out in the 90s, they were like these pioneering artists that carefully wove, the classical elements with pop and all this. There is a way to fuse without compromising,
Okay.
right? And my life's philosophy is on this. So you can have values, like I come from a religious family,
Yeah.
and I figured out a way that you can navigate in such a way that you can work with all of these artists without compromising.
Right.
And I continue to aspire to do that.
Right. So, I have two more questions, but I could kind of make it into one more. One
Sure.
is it's really leading from one misconception about tabla players that
Sure.
you wish everyone was aware of.
Okay.
I feel I also have one as well that I wanted to,
Yeah, ask
I
away.
don't know if I could read your mind,
Sure.
but I wanted to also add to that so you could answer these two in one kind of
Okay.
thing. If any of our listeners or viewers are listening to tabla for the first time through your music,
Mm.
what message would you like them to receive from your music? What would you like them to walk away with,
Yeah.
knowing, it's not that it's not just, and this is leading back to the first question I asked, that it's not just background music.
No, it's
It's
not.
it's not just global flavor,
No.
you know.
No.
It's more than that. So what would you like
Yeah.
people to know about tabla players as a closing?
Yeah. Um, where do I say? It's a very intriguing question. Uh, so tabla playing, I mean, I'm a soloist as well, right? So I mentioned earlier that we have a responsibility to make sure we uplift the listeners in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that, we have to do a better job of educating our listeners, especially in the Caribbean, uh, about the classical arts, not just going to a music school and learn music, but as the premier performers who are here in the scene today, we have to give them little, I would say, doses of lessons and morals and ethics of what the art is supposed to be, how it's supposed to be used in the industry. It's not just about filling the house and selling tickets, but there's a way to be responsible.
Right.
And I think part of that is education. So that's one thing. And sorry, take two on that. But can you just rephrase that question again one more time? The
So,
first part of the question?
a misconception
Yeah,
that
about
people may have about tabla music,
yeah,
you know,
trouble thing.
as background music,
Yeah,
backup,
yeah,
or as just a global flavor. Because,
yeah, yeah,
we've
yeah.
heard these songs that would just include 1 or 2 seconds of tabla music, and
Yeah,
then it's world
sure.
music, right?
Got it. Got it. Thank you. So music has the ability to shape the way you look at the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I told John McLaughlin this, and his eyes lit up. He was like, "Really? You think my music does this?" I was like, "Yeah. There's bands and artists that put out music that truly strikes the core of your heart and soul. If you listen with utmost devotion, and I feel like as a kid growing up, I was always resonating with music and tabla playing or artists that had a bigger message.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the music, whether it's Indian or calypso or chutney, that we are one people.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're a classical artist playing a solo, someone from another culture or tradition can hear that and feel that same, sense of oneness.
Right.
And I feel that that's what attracted me
Mm-hmm.
to use my platform to kind of let people know that music is much more than just entertainment value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That I think is, I won't say a heavy message, but definitely one that we should all carry with us,
Yeah.
when we do listen to, especially the classical genres.
Sure.
Like, it takes me back to the beginning of our chat here. It shouldn't be intimidating
No. Should
at
be
all.
fun.
It should
It's a
be fun.
serious form, yes,
Yes,
but you can have fun doing it.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So, well, I mean, you're well on your way to achieving, all of your goals and beyond. I don't
Sure.
expect that you would have known that you would have made such an impact,
Thank you.
in this way, and then continue just milestone after milestone.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to see what's next in your
Well, let me
journey.
just tell you this. I feel the best is yet to come.
Of
There's
course,
such talent in Trinidad
yeah.
here, and I feel if they have the right guidance, and I'll have to have more conversations
Mm-hmm.
with some of the mainstream
Mm-hmm.
artists, that there's so much more they can do with their music.
Yes.
And there is scope to evolve. For example, Chutney has I think a bigger ceiling, a higher ceiling to go. It's just that they have to be willing to take that risk.
Yes.
And so there's a way to make it happen. So I'll be part of that
I think
conversation.
I I
Yeah,
think we'd all appreciate that because, yeah, of course, our music should continue to evolve and,
sure.
beyond the bubble that we've created and
Yes.
existed in for how many ever decades, there's so much more out there, you know,
Yeah,
and we've only just begun our own journey. And this is where
exactly.
artists like you come in,
Thank
you
you.
know, to
Thank you.
help us along. So, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, I feel like we
I'll be
could talk
back
for
next time.
hours
We'll continue
about.
this.
But is there a message then that you want to share specifically with our Trinidadian, Guyanese
Yeah,
listeners,
sure.
you know, who might be creating music?
Yeah,
You know, they might be thinking, you know what, that's the point. I want to enter the fusion scene.
yeah,
I'm not sure how to do it
yeah.
because, again, to use the word purist, in
Sure,
Trinidad, we have that
sure.
view, don't
Right.
we?
I think as long as you're not conflicting the values,
Okay.
right? There's a way to fuse. But it requires, a lot of discipline
Mm-hmm.
and knowing, of course, the music, right? Whether it's the raga or the tala, you have to know what works, what doesn't work. Just because you can mix and mash two things together doesn't mean it works, or at least it should be accepted.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. It's like, cooking, right? You have to have the right blend of
Right
spices.
balance,
You
yeah.
have to allow that food to be on low heat
Yeah.
and let it cook. Allow it to cook.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I feel the industry is not patient. We
Yes.
need to
Yes.
allow the music to kind of evolve, give it time to
Yes.
evolve, and then you'll see the best stuff start coming out.
Well, I think we could
Absolutely.
use,
Yeah.
you know, those lessons on tenacity and just perseverance
That's
through,
key.
because all of the challenges that you must have faced in your journey, it didn't
Sure.
deter you. And
No.
look at where you are now. And again, having, you know, faced all of these different audiences,
Sure.
worked with all of these different artists, and still continue to remain, you know, the student, right?
And never to forget your roots.
And never to forget your
That's the
roots.
key.
Yeah, of
Whatever
course.
genre you're going into, just ask yourself why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing it wholeheartedly, I think there's an audience for your music out there.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Avi, once again. I'm
Thank you.
so thrilled
Such a
that
pleasure.
you made the time. Honestly, I think it's an honor for us to hear
It's
from
my
you.
pleasure.
And I hope you'll be back.
I sure
I
will.
know, so you must be
Yeah.
busy,
Yeah.
right? Making music.
Of course,
You have a studio
always.
session lined up after this,
Yes,
right?
yes, we do.
So
Yeah,
the work never ends.
that's
The work
right.
continues. So
Yeah.
best of luck.
Thank you.
And thanks again for
Thank you again. And keep up the amazing work SSR Productions are doing.
Thank you.
All right. Take care now.